So today I'm going to be talking about a book that I got over the Christmas holiday from my director. It's called People Care, and it's a book based on the perspectives and practices for professional caregivers and how to apply that to the caregivers. Now, I know most of you in here probably are not professional medical caregivers, but I'm just going to be talking about the book and more about the EMS and how I work with that. So, to start off, I would have loved to bring the ambulance down here, but I just couldn't fit it. And I don't think we could fit everybody inside of it either. I would have loved if we could have watched an episode of Emergency or something like that, but that just wasn't going to work. So, we're going to start off by playing a little bit of Name That TV Tune. So, we're going to start off with the first one. If you know it, shout it out. All right, there we go. You guys are quick on that one. All right, we'll go with the second one. MASH. All right. Okay. And the final one. $4 million. Not really. Not that rich. Emergency. Exactly. Now, how many of you know that emergency was actually started around the time that EMS was actually starting in the United States as an actual career? Anybody? Okay, it was one of the TV shows to combine the action genre and the medical drama into the same TV show. They used some of the medical practices that EMS uses, but we're more advanced today. Since then, there's been two other shows that have kind of done the same thing. One with firefighters, which was Chicago Fire, which is this year, and Trauma, which was a couple years ago, which was more about the ambulance EMS. So it aired in 1972, and at this time, EMS was taking off, and paramedics were a new idea on the show. Before then, with EMS, there wasn't a big deal with paramedics, EMTs. It was just kind of basic level first care, first aids providers. And I want to read to you guys a short, brief history on EMS. Just bear with me. It's kind of lengthy, but it kind of gives you an idea of how EMS kind of started in the United States. American historians claim that the world's first component of civilian pre-hospital care on scene began in 1928 when Julian Stanley Wise started the Roanoke Life-Saving and First Aid Crew in Roanoke, Virginia, which was the first land-based rescue squad in the nation. Canadian historians dispute this, with the city of Toronto claiming the first formal training for ambulance attendants was conducted in 1892. During World War I, further advances were made in providing care before and during transport. Traction splints were introduced during World War I and were found to have a positive effect on morbidity and mortality of patients with leg fractures. Two-way radios became available shortly after World War I, enabling for more efficient radio dispatch of ambulances in some areas. Shortly before World War II, a modern ambulance carried advanced medical equipment, was staffed by a physician, and was dispatched by a radio. In many locations, however, ambulances were hearses, the only available vehicle that could carry a recumbent patient, and were thus frequently run by funeral homes. These vehicles, which could serve either purpose, were known as combination cars. Prior to World War II, hospitals provided ambulance service in many large cities. With the severe manpower shortages imposed by the war effort, it became difficult for many hospitals to maintain their ambulance operations. City governments, in many cases, turned ambulance services over to the police or fire department. No laws required minimal training for ambulance personnel, and no training programs existed beyond basic first aid. In many fire departments, assignment to ambulance duty became an unofficial form of punishment, which I don't consider that punishment. I enjoy it. Advances in the 1960s, especially the development of CPR and defibrillation as the standard form of care for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, along with the new pharmaceuticals, led to changes in the tasks of the ambulances. In Belfast, Northern Ireland, the first experimental mobile coronary care ambulance successfully resuscitated patients using these technologies. One well-known report in the U.S. during this time was the Accidental Death and Disability Act. This report is commonly known as the White Paper. These studies, along with the White Paper report, place pressure on governments to improve emergency care in general, including the care provided by ambulance services. In the USA, prior to the 1970s, the ambulance service was largely unregulated, while some areas ambulances were staffed by advanced first aid level providers. In other areas, it was common for the local undertaker having the only transport in town in which one could lie down to operate both the local furniture store, where he would make the coffins as a sideline, and the local ambulance service. Kind of a little bit weird. The government reports resulted in the creation of the standards in ambulance construction concerning the internal height of the patient carrier area to allow for an attendant to continue to care for the patient during transport, and the equipment and thus weight that an ambulance had to carry, and several other factors. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the ambulance started, where we are today, where we have ambulances that we have people standing up in, and that moves us into where we're talking about the real EMS, and how today we're making advances in our pre-hospital care through technology. We've advanced in our AEDs, our defibrillators. We're advancing in modern medicine using drugs, IVs. We're like a portable ER unit, and we're just advancing through the general outcomes of patients. You know, we're doing CPR on a patient, and they live from that, and we keep those methods. We know those methods, and we progress from that. So, we're going to watch a short video, and we'll get into the book.
I was always kind of a nerdy kid at a young age. I walked around packing Band-Aids in his backpack, giving them out to people, and I've always kind of been interested in medicine. The best thing about being an EMT is seeing what all the human body can do, just phenomenal, but also a lot of independence. I'm in charge of that patient. It's me making the decisions. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with them, how to treat it before we get to the hospital. And then it's also a career that's specifically oriented to my natural tendencies, medicine and healthcare and that sort of thing.
I chose to go in the EMS because you get to go home at the end of the day and feel really good about what you did the day before. I always want to do something, I always want to be a part of something, I always want to help. Somebody. I actually worked in the fire department before, and I took an EMT class. And I enjoyed it so much I decided to go full-time in the EMS field. People on this job have type A personality. They're all wanting to just be all around a better person and to help other people in need. So this job gives me the thrill, it gives me the satisfaction of helping people. It's just a job that fits my personality.
Is a great way to get started in EMS.
I made the decision to volunteer because I wasn't sure if that's exactly what I wanted to do for a career. At the time, I had a full-time job. I knew I had to do it.
I lived in a small town and they needed drivers. I didn't think I could handle stressful situations, but I could drive. I took the basic course and I've been hooked ever since. It's very addictive.
A lot of our volunteers are in the community. They're citizens of the towns, the rural towns.
If you want to do something that has a true impact on people in the community.
Not a lot of people can do this, and I think if you are capable of doing it, it is important that you do.
Do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to help people.
One of the first calls that I remember was when I was with the volunteer service as just an EMT basic. Got a call for a fall, and when we got there, the lady was unresponsive on the floor and having a stroke. That just proved for me that with EMS, you really never know what you're going to get. Once one thing turns out to be something completely different.
I enjoy being outdoors and doing something different every day, and EMS is just that. I feel like EMS is important because people have a tendency to take their health for granted. With the rising cost of health care and some people out there who are uninsured put off their health care needs till the very last minute. Sometimes when they fall into our hands, they're pretty much in dire straits. What I like most about being a paramedic is that the emergency calls require us to take all of our knowledge right to the edge. Every day is different and exciting.
This is every day in Central County. This is why Central County is appealing to a lot of younger people. Stay busy. The first car wreck with injuries, transferred him. With that call, it's being able to work with all the different agencies, along with doing patient care, get stuff done, and getting out of a busy intersection. Your inner city folks are constantly going, it seems like. We'll probably run call after call. Right now, there's 3 trucks down around in this area, so you have to know where everybody's at all the time and who's going to be the closest truck. The second call was a hit and run. With him, he wasn't really hurt. He was just more shaken up and extremely upset. So get him to calm down and talk to you and just relax a little bit. 80% of this job in the first 5 minutes of every call is just getting the patient to settle down. You have to be confident that you're going to take care of them. You can go from holding a hand and making a difference to running in code blue.
Well, if you're looking for a non-traditional career, EMS provides an opportunity.
The thing that's exciting about EMS is the adrenaline rush that's associated with the emergency calls that arise on a daily basis.
People call us when they need help.
At the end of the day, when I come home, I feel like I've accomplished something.
We get to make a difference in people's lives.
If you think you're considering a career in EMS, just try it.
It's not a big investment. There's not a lot of hours in school. There's a lot of interesting things going on with medicine. Technology has really improved.
You're going to know right away whether or not you're cut out for this or it's something you enjoy or not.
All the young people out there that are interested in EMS, now's the time to get involved.
So that kind of explains a little bit about what I do, because I can't take you guys all the way into this run, so, but I'd love to. Anyways, we'll continue, and probably the part that y'all have been waiting for is the overview. So, People Care was written by Tom Dick. He is from the Denver area. My director knows him quite well, EMS. Tom Dick wrote this book in effort to show EMS workers things that we've kind of gone lax on and becoming more of a people care instead of just a paycheck. Not a lot of us in Thomas County are in the paycheck. We are here to help people, and that's what we love to do. We have two words that we love, and that's helping others. So People Care was a great read for myself. I don't know how many of you would have loved to read it. But it's a great book if you're just looking for maybe some ideas to glean from it, just to apply to your daily life, that you can, just open a new page and maybe see what it has to offer. So there's a picture of Tom Nick himself. He's been a paramedic for about 43 years, and he's still doing EMS. So as the video said, it's addictive. It's very addictive, and we enjoy it. So we need to teach EMTs and paramedics and those how to care for people. That's a thing in this society today that a lot of people don't know how to care for people in the right way. And we need to see it more as caring for people and not just getting paid as a paycheck. So EMS, we deal with the real stuff, and we deal with car accidents, suicide, murders, medical emergency, births, and etc. It goes on and on. We deal with everything. You're having a seizure, we come take care of you, you call 911. That's our job. That's what we get paid to do, and we enjoy doing that. And what the book starts talking about in the first chapter, it talks about there's two mistakes that we've started out with EMS, and I was going to read some for you guys. Mistake number one, we selected too many people who were sure to hate their jobs. When we enrolled in our first EMT courses, many of us learned to think of ourselves as rescuers. During the span of 20 or 30-year career in EMS, you'll indeed be involved in some rescues. But what do you do day after day and year after year is a lot less glamorous and a lot humbler. You help people. Most of the time, helping people is, work. There's a reason we call it that. Unfortunately, in the early days of EMS, we recruited too many hero wannabes who didn't want to help anyone but themselves. To their dismay, they found EMS unfulfilling. What they did, they became arrogant and abrasive. Sometimes, they got themselves sued. But if the public was lucky enough, along with the rest of us maybe, they soon got tired of not being acclaimed as heroes and drifted away. Heroism is a distinction other people sometimes bestow on you. It's not something you solicit, and it's certainly not an entitlement. Often, because people are imperfect observers, they honor the wrong people. Being a EMT requires more than being gifted. It requires you to be willing to give the gift of your life to people you don't know. In doing so, you acknowledge their value, just because they're people. You accept the dangers of responding in emergency vehicles. You accept the risks of damage to your cold joints, muscles, and ligaments. You willingly forfeit your meals and sleep to respond when they call. You physically lower yourself in front of them, and you tolerate their emesis, feces, and body odors. Most of all, you embrace their lives' burdens for a time. You ease their pain, you calm their fear, and you tell them with the caregiver's voice of yours not to worry. Don't be afraid. You've got them. You're going to take care of them. Most of all, nobody sees you do any of that, and there's no likelihood that you'll ever receive any acclaim, recognition, or reward for that. See, that's heroism. It's what great caregivers do all over the world every day. And it doesn't just happen in ambulances. It happens in nursing homes, in hospices, in cancer and burn treatment centers, in children's hospitals, in private homes. It happens in tenements and in alleys, on streets and in cardboard boxes, and wherever else you find people. Many of them are so poor and no one will ever know their names. Most of them will never become famous or important to anyone but you. But they're people. And to you as a caregiver, that makes them important all by themselves. So that's the first mistake, and his idea on what heroism is. I know a lot of people see firefighters, EMTs, and we're heroes. No, we're not heroes. We're just there to help people, and that's why we got into it. If there's EMTs that got into it for heroes, they're not going to last very long, because there's not times when you get called for somebody who's fell at 3 a.m. in the morning and they just fell out of bed. That's not really heroic action. Not very many people are going to see you at 3 a.m. in the morning. Most people are asleep in bed. But you respond and you take care of that person and you make their day feel better, and that makes their day brighter, and that makes them have a better tomorrow. So as we continue, the second mistake that he talks about is we foster people's false expectations by telling them it's going to be exciting. Our biggest mistake in EMS was helping our newest people believe that every call would be exciting for them. Experience has shown that some calls are indeed exciting, but others are fairly routine. Why? Because although we may have our notions about what constitutes as an emergency, emergencies are always defined by their owners, not by us. And that's actually okay, because EMS exists for the public. Nowhere in the world does the public exist for EMS. And so what he says is he goes on to talk about how how we're in EMS for taking care of people, and it moves on and talks about, he gives some examples of responding to calls and how some of them aren't exciting, but how they can be exciting for the patient and how it's an emergency for them. And then he talks about what EMS actually stands for. We all know it as emergency medical service, but there's also kind of a backing towards that that's kind of like a read between the lines. The E in EMS stands for emergency, not ours, but other people's. As a result, the emergencies we face will always be defined by their owners, not by us. That's how it's always been, believe it or not, and that's how it will always be. Expecting anything but reality will always be our own mistake. The M in EMS stands for medical. It doesn't stand for me and has nothing to do with more money for something else, more political power, or more public recognition. EMS is not just a public service, it's medicine. Public service is a good answer when somebody has a boo-boo, but when they're sick, they need medicine. Medicine needs to be driven by MDs, not MDAs. It needs to be administered by professionals, and it needs to transcend politics always. The S in EMS stands for service. It has nothing to do with self-esteem and self-anything. Another thing we should probably hear about in EMT class is the concept of customer service. Most of us clearly don't. That's unfortunate, because we're not the ones who own our equipment, our fuel, our maps, our stations, our radios, and the frequency on which we communicate. Nor do we own our uniforms or the patches on them or our certificates and the licenses. We can pretend we do, but we don't. You guys, the public, do. And they can take it away and give it to someone else at any time they want to. Trust me, the kind of power only comes from customers. And the public or private, large or small, neither we nor agencies are invulnerable to it. What do customers expect from us? They expect at least three things. They expect care, which amounts to the right kind of medicine delivered promptly and accurately by people who are competent, currently certified, and properly equipped to do their jobs. They also expect caring, which means they expect the same thing you expect in their position. They expect their care to come from people who actually want to be there, who actually relate to their pain, and who will actually like to help them. And finally, they expect our personal best. When they reach out to us, that's not to say perfection. The public is amazingly tolerant of honest mistakes on the part of their caregivers, possibly because they understand that no one can be perfect. But when we're caring for the loved ones, they expect our confidence, our undivided attention, our concern, our gentleness, and our best efforts to keep them comfortable and as free of pain as we can. So he talks about, in the rest of the book, he goes on to describe certain events that he's experienced in his own life and how we can, as EMTs in rural EMS, metro EMS, wherever you might be, how we can apply that to taking care of patients. And it's a big deal. When you arrive at that person's house and you're taking care of them and their loved one is, suffering a stroke, it's an upsetting thing. And you just putting that comforting hand on their shoulder and just telling them it's going to be all right is all the world to them. And one of the big things that they don't explain in protocols, which I think it should be, and he believes it should be, is hugs. Hugs are amazing. Hugs do a lot for patients. So one of the things he talks about is give yourself a hug. Try this simple technique for protecting people's fingers and arms when you're taking them through doorways. Tell them to give themselves a hug. So let's all give ourselves a hug. There. Yeah. Doesn't that feel good? So the best part about it is you can use the same trick to help balance a patient you're sliding or lifting from one service to another. It gives them something to hold on to. Then they don't surprise you by suddenly flailing their arms around or clutching at you instead. When someone complies with your request, you can smile at them and say, there, now didn't that feel good? Speaking of hugs, you won't find them mentioned in any medical protocols you've ever seen. That's too bad, because they're probably very good for some people. Last of all, they don't require a prescription, and there's no side effects or contraindications. When you arrive at Mary Johnson's home and find her on the couch complaining of non-pleuritic chest pain, and her husband Harry is lying in a hospital bed in the living room, they both know they're about to be separated, maybe for the last time. Try hard to imagine what a momentous event that is in the lives of those two people who have been faithful to one another for 50 years. Mary is obviously her husband's sole caretaker. Harry depends on her for all his life's needs. So does their little dog and the owner of the cat box on the kitchen floor. Face it, Mary doesn't just need that usual oxygen, aspirin, nitroglycerin, and morphine. She needs something to take that big load off hers. Maybe a hug should be in the protocol there somewhere. And then, along with the hug, sometimes, we can do this in our daily lives. We've got people who are having problems with problems at home, problems in their work life. Sometimes a hug just makes somebody's day brighter, and sometimes a smile does too. When you're a little kid and you woke up screaming about the thing on your bed, remember what your mom did? She gave you a hug, yes, but she did something else. Middle of the night or not, she put on her best smile for you. That smile said a lot. It said, I love you. I'm going to dust that old monster. I won't let anything happen to you. Don't be afraid. You're safe now, and everything's going to be okay. Grown-ups face monsters too, especially as they approach the ends of their lives. And what a coincidence. Grown-up patients who are scared to death tend to need all the same reassurance you needed and received from your mother all those years ago. There's a catch. When somebody's in crisis and you offer them your best fake smile, you might as well offer them a chrome-plated turd. If you generally don't like people, don't believe in their monsters, and don't want to be there unless there's a thrill in it for you, don't expect to disguise that with a smile. This is another one of those times when you just have to be a born caregiver and no one else will do it. So that's how the book is for most of the book. He talks about how some caregivers see it and how it needs to be changed and how we need to change somewhat of the healthcare system. Just giving them that listening ear and listening to their problems while you're on that ambulance ride to the hospital, or you're sitting in that ER room waiting for the doctor to come look at them. You just that listening ear and that shoulder to cry on for them to listen to you. Why we do what we do? Well, number one, we love helping people. If you don't love helping people, this is not a career for you. Number two, you got to be an adrenaline junkie. It's just the thing that, I got into EMS because I was an adrenaline junkie, and it's just how it goes on. You want to make a difference, and it's just because you want to do it, and then there's other reasons. Now, I started working for Thomas County EMS in July of 2012 after finishing a 6-month training course with Thomas County EMS for my EMT license. It was one of the best courses I've ever taken for continuing education, and I plan to go on to Garden City Community College to do their fire science program, which is their firefighting degrees, and the paramedic program down there, which we've had 2 of our paramedics up here at Thomas County have gone through Garden City, which is a really great program down there. Along the way, I've had great staff and mentors out of Thomas County EMS that have helped me along my way to becoming a better EMT, treating patients better, because we all believe out there it's helping people, it's not a paycheck. And that's why I'm a volunteer. I don't really get paid. It's a really confusing situation. You can talk to the county about that. But I'm a volunteer, and I do it because I love to help people. So, a quote to remember for today: no act of kindness, no matter how small, ever goes wasted. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. Any questions? Yes?
What do you do when you go to your call and you don't know what's the matter? What's your assessment?
Okay, we usually start out on our calls with an assessment that's just kind of a wide assessment. And we start with taking vitals. We ask them why they called us today. And, we're not doctors, we don't diagnose, but we try to somewhat figure out what's wrong, so when we call into the hospital, we can let them know what's going on. And then they can go from there and let the doctor know, and then the doctor can start making those ideas. But We take those vital signs, we see what's going on. We hook up what we call an electrocardiogram or an ECG, and our paramedics can read those, and they let us know if there's any heart problems. We listen to their lung sounds. You know, we just do everything that you would, like basically if you went to the doctor's office. And you know, we find out what's going wrong with them, and we go from there. Sometimes, you know, we may have been called for a fall, and as the lady said on the video, you get there and it was a stroke. I mean, it changes. Any other questions?
Yeah, you come on a car accident or something like that.
Okay.
Are you able to administer pain medication like morphine or something?
Okay. As an EMT right now, I'm not able to administer drugs. That's one of the things that EMTs really can't do. There's some drugs I can give, but none of the invasive type IV type medications. I can, in the state of Kansas, I can give nitroglycerin and some oral glucose and oxygen, but there's not really a lot of medications I can give. But the paramedics and AEMTs can give some of the pain medications for car accidents and stuff like that. Other questions? Yes?
What's it mean, code red or code blue?
We have what we call triage codes in EMS. Code greens are basically the patient is stable. They're not going to take any turn for the worse. Then code yellow, which would be the next one to follow, is potentially unstable. And you know, they could progress to a code red, taken long enough time. Code reds are a big deal because that means the patient's alert. But there's some problem that's gonna, you know, if it doesn't get fixed quickly, they're gonna code on us, which coding is the code blue, and that's where the patient has gone unresponsive, they're not breathing, they don't have a pulse, whatever it might be. And then we're doing CPR to try to resuscitate that patient. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
How long is your Garden City program?
The fire science program is, well, it's 2 years, but I've got my general education done here at Colby Community College, and it's basically going to be a 1-year program. And then the paramedic program is a 1 full year program. It starts in January and ends in December.
Have you also looked at the Hutchinson Community College program?
I have looked at Hutchinson, but I kind of like being close to home, so Garden City's a little more closer. Any other questions? Yes?
That last picture on the screen, was that your baby picture?
No.
Have you responded to a code blue?
I have responded to several code blues. There was actually one time I was eating lunch out at JMB Meat Market, and they were responding for a trouble breathing, and I heard it go off on my pager, and I went, okay, trouble breathing, you know, not as big of a deal, but it's a big deal. You know, it's the patient's emergency. It's not our emergency. And so I'm thinking through what might be going on, and then I hear one of my partners yell over, "It's a code blue," and I went, "Oh crap!" So, mind you, I'm sitting there eating with my family. We have taken one vehicle, not two. Usually when I'm on call, I take 2 vehicles. They take one, and I take one. And we all hop in the car. I just had my pager. I didn't have my radio. So I drove over to the ambulance barn. I don't know why. I just didn't respond to the scene. And picked up a radio. Asked them if they needed help. They said, "Go ahead and respond." So I responded. And, you know, I spent 3 hours of my afternoon, you know, taking care of somebody. But, you know, so yes, I have responded to several code blues. Any other questions?
Thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very much.
If you have any